continue on hormonal regulation. In order for the follicle to develop, the initiation of follicular genesis, there are particular or certain hormones that initiate the follicular genesis. Okay, so this hormonal interaction between anterior pituitary and the ovaries. So anterior pituitary will secrete gonadotropins, okay, under influence of GnRH. And hypothalamus secrete GnRH, so this GnRH will stimulate the anterior pituitary. Once stimulated, it will secrete FSH and LH. So this FSH travel to the blood, into the blood, and then arrive at ovary. So FSH present, it will stimulate follicles to develop. FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. Okay, LH, luteinizing hormone. Okay, in ovarian cycle, during ovarian cycle, FSH secretion is slightly greater than LH during early phase. So in terms of timing, so you can see here at day 1 until approximately maybe day 4, 5. Okay, FSH secretion is slightly higher. This FSH will stimulate the follicles to start their development or start to mature. Okay, then a bit later, LH secretion greatly exceed FSH. So this secretion, the LH secretion prior to ovulation, this one will influence the secretion of estrogen or sex steroid hormones in the cycle. So okay, and this hormonal regulation controlled by negative feedback. The presence of certain hormone will inhibit the secretion of FSH and LH. Okay, this slide over here represent the overall hormonal regulation. Okay, first, hypothalamus will secrete GnRH. This GnRH stimulate anterior pituitary. Once stimulated, the anterior pituitary will secrete gonadotropins, okay, FSH, LH. So follow this path here, FSH, LH. FSH, LH go to ovary, go to the follicles. It will initiate the follicles to grow or to develop. Okay, from primordial into primary, secondary, tertiary, and then most mature follicles. As these follicles grow, okay, the granulosa cells or the follicle cells, the surrounding cells, increase in numbers, right? Multiply themselves. So as these granulosa cells increase in number, so estrogen secretion elevated, higher. Okay, so granulosa cells secrete estrogens. So this estrogen, higher secretion of estrogen will cause negative feedback of anterior pituitary. Negative feedback of anterior pituitary and hypothalamus slow down the secretion of slow down the secretion of GnRH by hypothalamus, and then once slow down, the anterior pituitary also will slow down the secretion of FSH and LH. That is negative feedback. But remember, these follicles develop and grow into mature stages. So the estrogen will be elevated. the estrogen will be higher and higher. Okay, as this follicle grow, the estrogen will become higher and higher. So this high estrogen actually become positive feedback of this hypothalamus and anterior pituitary positive feedback, or it will stimulate, not inhibit, the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary to secrete their secretion. So eventually secretion of LH, FSH is higher, especially LH, the LH surge, and this LH surge will cause ovulation, because and ovulation. So these left behind follicles will transform into corpus luteum and will take over in terms of secretion, hormone secretion. Okay, in this path here. So this is how this hormonal interact, the hormones interact throughout the ovarian cycle. Okay, remember as these follicles grow, the follicles will secrete estrogens, right? Okay, the estrogen secreted by follicle cells is actually not by granulosa cells. It's interaction between T-car cells and granulosa cells. T-car cell is the outer layer follicle cells. Okay, so what happens is T-car cells has LH receptors. So LH secretion, LH hormone will bind to T-car cells, and once bind, it will stimulate or assist further follicle expansion, meaning multiple layer of granulosa cells and T-car cells. Okay, expansion of that cells. At the same time, that T-car cells will produce precursor for estrogen secretion. That means these T-car cells will convert cholesterol into androgens. Okay, androstenedione. Once androstenedione present, it will send that androstenedione to granulosa cells. This pathway here, T-car cells, it will convert the precursor, the cholesterol, into androgens. Okay, androgens, especially androstenedione. So this androstenedione is a precursor for estrogen secretion. Androstenedione, T-car cell will pass this androstenedione to granulosa cells. So granulosa cells will continue the process of making estrogen. It will convert the androstenedione into the estrogen, whether estrone or estradiol. This is type of estrogen. So androstenedione convert into this estrogen, then this estrogen can be passed to follicle cells and also to hypothalamus and anterior pituitary to cause their effect. Okay, so this is how cooperation between T-car cells and granulosa cells in estrogen production. Okay, T-car cells have LH receptor. Granulosa cells has FSH receptor. So it will initiate follicle development, follicle growth. As granulosa cells increase in number, androgen or androstenedione received from T-car cells convert or aromatize into estrogen, and then will cause their effect in the system. Okay, it also this thing happen also in terms of progesterone production. Okay, this keyword here, later, at later phase or during ovulation or before ovulation, the granulosa cells also will have LH receptor and also FSH receptor. So it will bind to FSH and LH to produce much higher estrogen. Eventually that higher or elevated of estrogen will influence the secretion of LH surge that cause the ovulation. So this is what happened basically in terms of hormonal regulation. Okay, when FSH LH present, it will go to ovary, it will stimulate the certain cells. Okay, FSH stimulates granulosa cells. FSH bind to granulosa cell, initiate the follicle development. As follicles develop into mature follicles, increase in granulosa cells, okay, it will cause production of higher estrogens. Okay, at the same time, TICA cell, remember TICA cells present at secondary phase, secondary follicles, presence of TICA cells. So that TICA cells eventually bind to the LH, it will assist in terms of production of estrogens. Okay, so that is hormonal regulation in ovarian or menstrual cycle. So now we will look into the menstrual cycle. So